So at the moment, I'm building the secretariat of the Global Student Forum. It's the first democratic and independent student platform for student representation on the international level since basically the 80s, when the former International Union of Students was crushed between the power politics of the time, between the KGB and the CIA-funded part of it. And we are building a global voice of students to represent the interests of the constituency towards the international community, with specific focus on the United Nations, on UNESCO, the ILO, the ECOSOC Council, and the High Level Political Forum, to give a voice to students in these forums. So my journey in students' participation started quite some time ago. When I entered university, I was active in my local students' council, and then moved up the ranks to the National Student Youth Union in Austria, moving on to the European Students' Union, where I served as a member of the presidency for 2.5 years. And in my role there, I was building the global outreach of the European Students' Union that led to the establishment of the Global Student Forum. I do believe that students are an equal part of the academic community, and they should have equal rights to be part of the decisions that are taken within higher education institutions. And alongside that, I do believe that university is a very political space, and that students should use their right to be political and be part of the decisions that are taken. For me personally, when it comes to students' participation, particularly interesting is the comparison between how students' participation is facilitated not only within Europe, but if you have a look at the global scale, it differs a lot from country to country, but also from continent to continent. And my particular interest is trying to facilitate best practice exchanges that would result in increased students' participation in different parts of the world. I do think that students who involve themselves in educational policy making, in governance of higher education institutions, can gain a lot of advantages by not only learning how to play the game of decision making within governance structures, but also by really just lobbying for their interests and implementing activities in the interest of their peers. I do think this is the core benefit. I do think that the obstacles and hurdles that students face when it comes to participation are very, very different from local context to local context. In general, I do think that it's really important to give students training to actively and meaningfully participate in university governance. This is one issue. The second challenge that students are facing, and student unions more generally are facing, is the question of financing. How can we sustain independent self-organizing structures? Students particularly are not a social class with a lot of money in their pockets. So how can we ensure that student unions can financially sustain themselves and do the work that they need to do? Quite generally, that any individual that involves themselves in student politics learns principles of democratic decision making, learns principles of working in a team. The student movements also convey a certain set of values, usually that accompany you for the rest of your life. And I think in terms of professional development, it's also a very good space to learn how to organize large-scale activities, to learn how to organize budgets, to learn how to speak to people that might be superior in any kind of hierarchical structures to you. So I think it's really a way of getting ready for doing whatever that person would like to do after. So I do think it's not only a personal, but a very big professional benefit that comes from being active in the students' movement. Representation, co-decision making, and political engagement. I do think that everyone should be able to get involved, but in reality we do see that the leadership of student unions, not only on the local, but even more so on the national and the regional level, usually comes from very privileged parts of society. So I do think that something we need to address is that student participation, student governance work is usually not financially compensated. So we are not very inclusive in our own structures, and this leads to a lack of diversity within the realm of student representatives. I do think it's really hard lately to motivate people to participate. I do think that the mindset that students go into higher education institutions with changed. You don't really take the time to take a look around anymore in the way that we perceive education at the moment. Students are rushing through their studies in order to get their license to be able to be employed. And I do think that the willingness to take part in student participation activities in student unions suffers from that. It's very difficult, I think, to motivate people. But if I had to motivate people, I would say it's a way for yourself to co-decide on the decisions that shape your life, that shape your educational realities, and it's always worth to involve yourself in such issues. I personally am very happy that we managed to establish a global democratic structure for student representation. This hasn't been the case for 40 years, and I think it's very much needed to combat tokenism, to combat cherry picking in international decision-making spaces. So I'm very proud of that.